Millionaire cancels wedding for Maid. The shocking discovery that transformed his life forever. Ethan Blake stood in the vast, gilded hallway of his mansion. The subtle elegance of marble floors and crystal chandeliers, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside him. The looming wedding date, once a source of excitement, now felt like a noose tightening around his neck. He could practically hear the wedding bells echoing the life he was poised to embrace. A life crafted from riches, filled with glamour, and adorned with the perfect fiancé. Yet, with every potential plan weighed against the reality of his heart, he felt more suffocated. Each step through his opulent home heightened his awareness of the emptiness that echoed in the spaces he once considered filled with potential. The lavish exterior had become an extravagant facade that concealed the fractures in his spirit, whispering doubts of authenticity. Was this indeed what he wanted? An image adored and an identity supported by the insatiable need for social media validation? His thoughts drifted to Rosa, the steady maid who had been his anchor since childhood. Strong and devoted, she wielded a warmth that seemed to shatter the chill of his gilded cage. On a whim cloaked in desperation, he sought her out, half expecting her to assure him everything would align as per the plans he had meticulously orchestrated. Instead, she smelled the anguish buried within and lifted her gaze, bold enough to challenge the very foundation of his made-up life. "What does it mean to love someone when you don't even understand what you value?" Rosa had asked during their last late-night conversation, her voice breaking the silence of the house that held too many burdens. That question surged within him, tumultuous and unrelenting. Who was he really? Beneath the polished surface of wealth, beneath the facade of the affable entrepreneur, lay a man terrified of facing his own sense of purpose. As the pressure mounted, Ethan wrestled with the implications of Rosa's words, sensing they bore the weight of both revelation and recklessness. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days passed, and each moment with Rosa offered shards of brilliance revealing her fervent dreams tucked behind the backdrop of servitude. She too harbored aspirations, an app idea that could disrupt the tech landscape in ways he hadn't considered. Something raw and genuine that their worlds had never mixed. Here he was, living a life where every desire was served on a silver platter, while she fought against every obstacle thrown in her way. Ethan's moral compass, previously dull, pierced through the fog of his existential crisis. Now the dilemma gripped tighter. Torn between wealth and authenticity, he grappled with the realization of facade versus substance growing painfully stark. The wealthy expectations of his family loomed over him, whispering pathetically remnant thoughts of approval and legacy. Another fanfare wedding. Another round of applause for the billionaire. But was it applause he truly sought or connection? Just as clarity ignited, a realization struck him with the force of a tidal wave. Amidst the struggle for status and success, he had lost the core of who he was. The ghosts of estranged family members haunted him, their disapproval lurking like phantoms, whispering in the shadows of his opulent home. Torn apart by the weight of their expectations, and the newfound allegiance he felt toward Rosa, Ethan stood uncertain, wedged against the price of his choices. Would he step away from the empty accolades that defined him? Or clutch them tighter as fear gripped him? With each passing second, he sensed the chasm widen between who he was becoming and who he was expected to be. A point of no return on the precipice of a decision that had the power to reshape his very existence forever. Ethan stood in the middle of his grand living room, the lavishness that surrounded him only accentuating his internal turmoil. The sun streamed through the tall windows, spilling golden light onto the polished floors. But even that brightness felt tainted by his inner darkness. His mind replayed a multitude of scenarios. His wedding day, the celebration of his supposed success, and yet he felt like a ghost haunting his own life, invisible to the joy that should have resonated with such milestones. He thought of Rosa's aspirations, her fire juxtaposed against the stagnant facade that had become his life. The urgency to break free from the gilded chains tightened within him. Seeking solitude, he slipped out to his private office, the room where he had always crafted business plans, shielded from both the world's scrutiny and his own failures. The leather-bound notebook, filled with meticulously crafted plans and projections, now lay open, an uninviting reminder of a mission that felt meaningless. Ethan found himself staring blankly at those pages, the figures colliding in his mind. He flicked to a fresh page, and an impulse, unlike anything he had felt before, urged him to write. Not about profit margins or business partnerships, but about something raw and personal. He penned a list of values he believed defined him: integrity, passion, dreams. But they felt like hollow echoes, words detached from reality. What if he risked everything? What if he took a step into the unknown? The thought both thrilled and terrified him. Would seeking authenticity lead to success in a way he had never considered? Each tick of the clock ratcheted the tension within him. He had spent too long living by the scripts written for him, comfortable within expectations, but unfulfilled in meaning. In a moment of reckless clarity, he pulled out his phone. There it was, Rosa's contact, the woman whose dreams had breathed life into the shadows of his own. With a steadying breath, he unlocked the screen and typed a message, feeling both exhilarated and anxious. "Rosa, can we talk? I want to hear more about your app idea." The seconds stretched as he waited for a reply. Doubt seeped in. What if she didn't want to talk? What if she saw through his newfound clarity, recognizing it only as desperation clinging to her strength? But then came the notification. She was free. They met at a small cafe, away from the glamorous confines of his world. The muted chatter around them felt grounding as they settled into a booth. Rosa arrived with a glimmer in her eyes, a stark contrast to the uncertainty bubbling inside him. "I couldn't believe you reached out," she said, her voice steady, laced with curiosity and hope. "I need your insight," he confessed, vulnerability mixing with his anxiety. "I want to understand what you're envisioning. I want to help." As she unraveled her vision, her passion illuminated the room, and Ethan felt something miraculous occurring within him, an awakening. He absorbed the intricacies of her idea, recognizing not just the potential in her concept, but the life behind it. For the first time in years, he felt like he was truly listening. Not just listening, but learning. Here was a raw ambition that demanded respect, not just one more product to bolster his empire. The conversation transitioned from brainstorming to deeper topics, exposing layers of dreams and fears. With each word, Ethan unearthed a sense of belonging that had long felt foreign. The barriers erected by his wealth melted away, revealing a connection that resonated deeper than social status. But as they wrapped up their discussion, another wave of doubt crashed over him. What did this truly mean for his life? Realistically, the moment was fleeting, a mere respite before he returned to the weight of expectations. He watched Rosa laugh, her joy genuine, and a sharp pang of guilt hit him. Could he pursue this path without endangering her dreams? Ethan realized he stood at a crossroads, a tumultuous junction between the life he was expected to lead and the raw, uncharted territory unfolding before him. The stakes had never felt higher, and yet the thrill opened a door he had long suppressed. Faced with the immense potential for both risk and reward, Ethan's heart raced. Was he prepared to dive into the depths of authenticity, or would he retreat into his comfort zone one last time? The moment of truth had arrived. Would he seize the opportunity to redefine his life, or cling to the familiar chains of expectation? Ethan left the cafe, the weight of the conversation hanging over him like a dense fog. The echoes of Rosa's fervor surged through him, almost intoxicating. Yet, alongside that exhilaration lay a shadow of responsibility. More than just business, this was a personal undertaking, a venture intertwined with another person's dreams and aspirations. Could he honestly bring value to her vision without imposing his own diluted expectations? As he walked, the streets felt foreign under his feet. Each step away from the cafe seemed to pull him back toward the life he had always known, into the realm of banality he had just glimpsed being pulled away from. Suddenly, everything around him, the fancy boutiques, the extravagant cars, felt phony. They were remnants of a life that no longer resonated with the core he was starting to discover. Fighting against the gravitational pull of his existing lifestyle, he rushed home, thoughts racing faster than the vehicles around him. What did a meaningful life look like? He could no longer define it solely by wealth or status. Instead, what spoke to him was creativity, impact, authenticity, panting breaths in the chase toward something real. His private office was not a refuge anymore. It felt like shackles. The leather-bound notebook still lay open on the desk, an invitation to confront his truth. Sitting back down, he let the ink flow. This time his hand didn't hesitate, his pen carving out new ideas and plans, a synthesis of Rosa's vision and his own drive for authentic success. He didn't just replicate her concept. He innovated. He visualized creating not just an app, but a movement, a community forged around genuine connections and shared dreams. As he wrote, he felt barriers begin to crumble. This was no longer a transaction for him. It was about collaboration, support, invitation, and yet, beneath that enthusiasm simmered apprehension. What if he misstepped? What if Rosa resented his influence? His mind wrestled with every possible outcome, scrutinizing the duality of his motives. Was he helping, or was he trying to salvage his sense of self through her journey? The lines blurred painfully. He needed to address this with Rosa. This partnership had the potential to flourish, but only if both of them were genuine in their intentions, laying bare their motivations before their collaboration could take root. Later that evening, as he prepared to reach out for another meeting, the phone rang. Unfamiliar but intriguing, the number flashed across the screen. Something compelled him to answer, though a sinking suspicion accompanied the impulse. "Ethan Miller?" a voice said. "Yes," he replied cautiously. "You don't know me, but I have something important to discuss with you." His pulse quickened. Every cautionary thought screamed at him to hang up, but every craving for change urged him to hear this stranger out. With a deep breath, he leaned in, straddling the edge of vulnerability where opportunity often flourishes. "What is it?" he asked, unsure if he was ready for whatever revelation awaited him. "I know about your interest in Rosa's app, and I have information that could change everything for both of you," the voice added cryptically. Ethan felt the ground beneath him shift. What information could this stranger hold? What if it tipped the delicate balance he had been trying to navigate? With uncertainty thickening the air, Ethan muttered, "What do you know?" An ominous silence engulfed the call, punctuated only by the stranger's enigmatic words. "Just because the app sounds like a brilliant idea doesn't mean it is. Your past is catching up with you, Ethan, and you aren't the only one taking risks." As the call ended abruptly, a jolt of realization surged through him. Here was a warning. Here was a challenge. This was a pivotal moment. The intersection where everything he thought he had been escaping collided with the very aspirations that fueled him. The stakes now reached dizzying heights, forcing Ethan to confront his choices head-on or risk losing everything before it had even begun. Was he ready to face the darkness of his past to carve a new future, or would he falter under the weight of what was revealed? As he stared into the distance, a new kind of determination ignited within him, yet fear coursed alongside it, injecting clarity into his tumultuous journey ahead. The stakes had never felt higher, and as he sat back, wrestling with revelations and uncertainties, The question plagued him. Should he reach out to Rosa? Or should he first unearth what this voice had stirred in him? Would uncovering the truth strengthen his path? Or would it derail everything he was trying to build? The battle within raged on as he faced the unknown. Ethan paced the length of his office, the darkened corners echoing with each footfall, a reflection of his tumultuous thoughts. The sudden call loomed in his mind, taunting him, stirring both anxiety and curiosity. He had been so focused on building a new reality with Rosa that he hadn't truly examined the remnants of his past. What shadows followed him? And why had the caller seemed to possess such intimate knowledge of his life? Wrestling with this overwhelming sense of curiosity, he turned back to his notebook, flipping through pages filled with half-formed ideas and hasty sketches. It was then that he stumbled upon a list of personal goals he had scribbled months ago, an aspiration to break free from superficiality, pursue authenticity, and inspire change. The ink bled together, each goal intertwined with the emotional weight he had buried deep. Suddenly it struck him. True transformation required not only forward motion, but also a reckoning with the past. Before he could overthink it, Ethan grabbed his phone. He needed a tactical approach. Half-hearted attempts wouldn't suffice. The conversation with Rosa wasn't solely about partnership. It had to be grounded in transparency, his own admission of flaws alongside her dreams. With a few hesitant taps, he sent her a message, proposing they meet again the next day. As he waited for her response, his mind drifted. The voice that had called him felt like an echo of countless missed opportunities, choices once made in haste. At that moment, he realized he hadn't just been avoiding Rosa's vision. He had been dodging scrutiny of his own life. In the quiet stillness of his office, he acknowledged the fear he had kept hidden. The fear of facing consequences, of acknowledging that his past decisions stemmed from aiming for validation over genuine fulfillment. Once, he had chased after high-powered deals and flashy achievements, believing they equated to success. But now, what mattered was the depth of his contributions, the integrity in his pursuits, and the authenticity he craved. The phone buzzed, jolting him from his ruminations. Rosa's response was immediate and concise. "Tomorrow works. Let's dive deeper this time." Her willingness to engage ignited another flicker of hope within him. Yet with that flicker came trepidation. As the night drew on, he found himself reflecting. How much of what he'd built relied on his former self? Perhaps the upcoming conversation with Rosa was just as much about her project as it was about him confronting the facades he had erected. He needed to strip away the layers, to expose raw vulnerability, an act that felt both vital and terrifying. Determined, Ethan started drafting points he wanted to discuss with Rosa. His ideas for her app, his visions for collaboration, but also his evolving understanding of his own motivations. This wasn't merely a business pitch. It was a commitment to honesty, a promise to himself and her, to build something meaningful together. Yet in his heart, uncertainty gnawed at him. The unknown lurked behind every revelation. Would Rosa appreciate his candor, or would it prompt her to question his intentions? He needed her to trust him, especially after the stranger's ominous warning. As the hour grew late, Ethan sensed a palpable shift within, a mix of fear and fortitude. In a world rife with pretense, he wouldn't shy away from revealing his authentic self. But as he thought about the stranger's words, that his past was catching up with him, he wondered if this reckoning would be the catalyst for his redemption or a moment of recklessness. With a final glance at his notes, he whispered to himself, "Tomorrow will reveal everything." This was no longer just an initiative. It was a reclaiming of his narrative, a partnership steeped in mutual understanding, a chance to reshape his destiny. And just as he was about to turn off the lights, his phone rang again. An unknown number flashing ominously across the screen, drawing him toward yet another moment of truth. Would this call bring fresh revelations, or would it unveil more complications in the already tangled web of his life? Curiosity melded with apprehension as he reached for the device, ready to face whatever challenge lay ahead. Ethan hesitated, the phone vibrating persistently in his hand. The tension was almost palpable, as if the darkened office around him was a cocoon for his escalating anxiety. He understood that each ring carried the weight of a decision, one that could unravel his fragile sense of self. A deep breath filled his lungs, but the air felt stifling as memories of his past echoed in his mind. "You can't outrun your history," he muttered, almost as a chant to silence the growing cacophony of doubt. It was time to confront whatever the unknown caller had to reveal. He answered, his heart pounding like a drum. "Ethan." The voice on the other end was low and measured, not the alarming tone he had anticipated. "I have information about your past. Things you thought were buried." Ethan's pulse quickened. What could this stranger possibly know that he didn't? Was this call an invitation to revisit his previous mistakes, or a chance to finally exorcise those demons? "Who are you?" he managed, his voice steadier than he felt. "Let's just say I have connections," the voice replied. "You need to be careful. There are people who don't want you digging into old business, including your own." The cryptic message sent shivers down his spine, a reminder that the consequences of his past were ever present. A torrent of questions rushed through his mind. Who could want to harm him now? What skeletons lay hidden, waiting to rear their ugly heads? "Tomorrow, when you meet Rosa, you need to be prepared," the voice continued. "Your reckoning is at hand, and it might be more than just her project on the line." Ethan's mind raced. The call was a harbinger of not just personal discovery, but also potential danger. How was he supposed to disclose his vulnerabilities to Rosa, without the context that hung over him like a dark cloud? He felt the tight knot of anxiety in his stomach twist tighter. "Why should I trust you?" he could barely ask, fearing the answer. "You shouldn't," the voice said matter-of-factly. "But you need to start aligning your actions with the truth. If not, expect consequences." The line went dead, leaving Ethan enveloped in a chilling silence. He leaned against his desk, his eyes narrowed with determination as clarity dawned. This moment, this disturbance in his life, was a defining juncture. As rage and fear battled within, he began to connect the dots. If he was going to face Rosa, a vital part of building his future, he had to drag his past into the light. Each shameful choice he had made, every unethical deal he had accepted, hung like a loaded gun above his head. He gathered his scattered notes from earlier, frantically organizing his thoughts. He would not only present ideas for Rosa's app, he would lay bare his fears, his motivations, and the truth of who he was. This wasn't merely about business. It was about opening a dialogue steeped in vulnerability. Yet he hesitated. Would revealing his truth alienate Rosa, or would it bolster their partnership? There was no algorithm for this, only raw honesty. As dawn approached, Ethan felt the weight of his choices settle within him. This call had forced his hand. He knew he would enter that meeting with Rosa, not just as a business partner, but as a man shrouded in the complexities of his past, ready to carve out a new path. With newfound resolution, he prepared for the day ahead, trying to shake off the anxiety that clung to him. Just as he opened his office door, he spotted Rosa standing in the hallway, her bright smile illuminating the space. He felt an electric rush of hope. This was the moment they would either build or unravel. But before he could take a step toward her, another message flashed on his phone, this one from an unknown sender, reading ominously, "You can't escape what you owe." Ethan froze, the weight of his impending confrontation with Rosa now compounded by this new threat. What debts were still unpaid? Would facing her go beyond professional challenges? His heart raced as uncertainty clawed back to the surface. He knew. The time had come to awaken the shadows of his past. Ethan took a measured breath as he stepped intentionally toward Rosa, his mind racing with every possible outcome. He braced himself for the meeting, the looming specter of his past whispering through the recesses of his thoughts. Her presence was a lifeline, a chance at redemption. Yet anxiety knotted his stomach as he recalled the message about debts still owed. "Good morning, Ethan," Rosa greeted cheerfully, her eyes sparkling with genuine enthusiasm. "I was hoping we could go through the app framework one last time before the presentation." "Absolutely," he replied, forcing a smile that felt foreign to him. Her optimism was a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside him. As they settled in the nearby cafe area, he struggled to maintain his composure, marking the meeting's importance on both personal and professional fronts. With every sip of coffee, he tailored his thoughts around what he would say, knowing he needed to express the truth about himself while still preparing for the potential fallout. Rosa flipped through her notes, her brow furrowing in concentration. She was immersed in what lay ahead, full of enthusiasm about their project, yet Ethan felt chained to his past. He recognized that this was as much about them as it was about him. "I've been thinking about user engagement on the app," Rosa started, sharing her ideas with passion. "I feel like if we make it more interactive, we could really capture—" "Rosa," Ethan interrupted gently but firmly. The sound of her voice faded into the background as he wrestled with a push and pull of his intentions. "Before we continue, there's something I need to discuss." She met his gaze, concern flickering in her eyes. The warmth he had always liked about her suddenly felt like a weight, amplifying his discomfort. "What is it? You look serious." The moment hung in the air, a pregnant pause that demanded his honesty. There was no perfect phrasing, no rehearsal he could rely on. Simply the truth, raw and unadorned. "I have some personal complications that might affect our partnership," he said, his voice unwavering despite the storm inside him. "Things from my past that I can't ignore any longer." Rosa listened with rapt attention, her expression shifting from intrigue to concern. Just as he prepared to delve deeper, his phone buzzed again, a cruel interruption that shattered the momentary bravery he had summoned. "Excuse me," he muttered, glancing down to the screen. It was another message, identical to the last one. "You can't escape what you owe." The confirmation of something unseen made his pulse race. How could he focus on the discussion at hand, when layers of intimidation awaited like shadows in the periphery? "Ethan?" Rosa's voice broke through, grounding him once again. "What's going on?" "I need to handle this," he said, the words barely spilling from his lips. His fight-or-flight instinct kicked in, urging him to run from both the meeting and his responsibilities. But confronting these shadows was paramount. He had stood at enough crossroads to know he wouldn't find clarity in avoidance. "I'm sorry, Ethan felt his resolve straining. "What do you need?" she asked, lacking judgment, genuine concern filling her gaze. In her face, he saw a reflection of his own inner turmoil, and he longed to dissolve into her understanding. "I might need your support. There are truths I have concealed that challenge everything I've built, everything I want to build with you." She frowned, uncertainty washing over her as she processed his words. The path forward had transformed. This was no longer just about an app. It was about two people standing on the brink of an uncertain future. "Let's talk it out," she offered softly. "Together, I want to know." But before Ethan could muster the courage to convey his buried secrets, another message pinged in rapid succession, illuminating his phone once more. "Remember, every choice has a price." An icy grip tightened around his chest. Could this be a warning? A threat? Did it extend beyond him, now encroaching upon Rosa? All at once he felt the stakes elevate, one foot tangled in the past, while the other stood on shaky ground. "Ethan?" Rosa's voice pulled him away from the precipice of anxiety, but he knew he couldn't back down. "I have to make a choice. I need to be open, yet I fear what might happen if I do." With each heartbeat, the choice to plunge into vulnerability became both a risk and a necessity. What waited for him on the other side, he could hardly fathom. But it was time to step through the door he had long kept closed. As he opened his mouth to speak, another message arrived, sending his heart racing once more. "Tomorrow, payback arrives." Ethan's voice faltered yet again, words stuck like stones in his throat. The tension mounted. Now was the hour of reckoning, one that could change everything. Could facing his fears finally liberate him, or would it lead to an even deeper entanglement with the darkness he wished to escape? His determination flickered, and with urgency in his heart, he braced himself for the liberation or collapse that awaited him. With Rosa watching intently, Ethan knew the moment had truly arrived. Ethan's heart raced as a flood of urgency coursed through his veins. He recognized that the time for uncertainty was quickly evaporating. His past, shrouded in shadows, loomed large, threatening to unravel everything he cared about. Glancing at Rosa, he caught a glimpse of the compassion in her eyes, a lifeline amid the turmoil. Taking a deep breath, he ignited a flicker of courage. "Rosa, The words felt heavy, as if layered with years of silence. "There's something I haven't shared with you. It's about my financial situation. Debts that don't just weigh on me, but could also impact our project and our future together." Rosa's brows knitted together, not in judgment, but in understanding. "What do you mean by debts?" "Ethan, you're not making me feel anxious, but this sounds serious." His stomach twisted, the truth dancing perilously on the edge of his consciousness. With every moment delayed, the consequences of transparency multiplied. But beneath the anxiety lay an ember of resolve growing dimly brighter. Simply letting the words spill forth felt like a thunderstorm poised to crack the silence. "I used to make choices that led to trouble," he managed, each word vibrating with an emotional weight he'd ignored for too long. "I was drawn into a business deal that spiraled out of control. Now, I have people breathing down my neck. I tried to dig myself out, but it's only gotten worse." A flicker of shock crossed Rosa's face, but she quickly masked it with concern. "You're dealing with people threatening you? Why didn't you say anything before? We could have tackled it together." The very thought pierced through the guilt knotted in Ethan's heart. "I thought I could manage it on my own. I didn't want to burden you." "Ethan," she interrupted gently, but with firmness. "You aren't a burden. If we're supposed to work as a team, then you have to trust me enough to include me in your life, even the messy parts." The sincerity in her voice cracked something within him. Over the weeks they'd collaborated, her passion and energy had inspired him to dream and reach for possibilities. But alongside that inspiration, his fear had festered, turning potential connections into unspoken barriers. "I don't want to lose what we have," he confessed quietly. "And I'm terrified that opening this door will push you away." Rosa's gaze softened, and she reached across the table to grasp his hand. "Honesty doesn't drive people apart, Ethan. It cements trust. Let's look at this together. I may not have all the answers, but you don't have to face this alone." Her words ignited a flicker of hope. Her positive outlook felt like a shield against the battering storm of his anxieties. Still, an undercurrent of dread reminded him of the imminent threats. Tomorrow, payback would arrive, not just for him, but for them. "I want to fight this," he murmured, a resoluteness blossoming in his chest. "But I don't know where to start. I didn't get this far alone. I made mistakes at every turn. I don't want to drag you down with me." Rosa's grip tightened gently. "Then let's fuse our strengths. You have an incredible understanding of technology and user experience, while I can help strategize. The debts may feel tangled, but we might untangle them together." As he contemplated her words, Ethan felt a sudden rush of possibility. Perhaps digging deep into this professional venture could forge a new path away from the shadows. But would the looming threat give him time to strategize, or would the effort be rendered moot by long-ignored responsibilities? "Let's plan our next moves," Rosa urged, her voice steadying him as she shared a smile that momentarily dispelled the darkness. "We can start by assessing what we have at our disposal and handling one thing at a time." Her enthusiasm was infectious, yet his internal clock ticked feverishly towards tomorrow. In a moment marked by fright and finances, he realized solutions were not just business principles. They demanded the intertwining of vulnerability and ambition. Bolstered by her presence and strength, Ethan felt a sudden clarity. Stepping forward into action, spurred on by the prospect of conquering his chaos alongside Rosa, he initiated a discussion on creating a budget and lists of priorities. But as the conversation shifted to strategies and timelines, the tension within him remained. He knew that time was running out. He could work with Rosa, but shadows of his past still threatened to consume them both. Would he have the clarity to face the people demanding what he owed? And was he prepared to confront the truth about the lengths he had gone to in hiding his past? With the clock ticking loudly in his mind, a sense of urgency swelled. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough, and with it, the moment would arrive, to decide if he'd break free from his burdens or be overwhelmed by them, to decide if this new chapter with Rosa might also be the ending of a darker chapter in his life. Ethan's night felt like a demarcation of two realities: the past, relentless and heavy, and the emerging future trembling on the horizon. He tossed and turned, the weight of his decisions pressing down on him, suffocating yet liberating. Rosa's encouragement played in his mind, stirring a cautious hope. But the specter of his creditors wrapped around him like a vice, tightening as sleep eluded him. In the early hours of dawn, the sun seeped into his room, infusing it with warmth. Still, warmth couldn't dissolve the cold knot of trepidation lingering in his stomach. He transitioned into the day not merely as a man burdened by debt, but as a professional eager to reclaim his narrative, if he could just muster the strength to confront his reality. Before meeting Rosa, Ethan had evaded responsibility. Time spent buried in code and algorithms felt like an escape from the mess he'd constructed in life. But the conversation with Rosa had flipped the narrative. He was no longer just a programmer. He was a partner, and partners shared their deepest fears, right? If they could channel their combined strengths, perhaps the project could serve as their beacon, illuminating a way through the fog that had nearly swallowed him whole. Arriving at their makeshift office, he noticed Rosa's determined posture as she organized their notes, her focus sharp and unwavering. The air within the small space buzzed with ideas, and for a moment, Ethan felt like he belonged somewhere solid. "Morning, let's dive in," she said, her enthusiasm contagious. Any lingering fear within him began to crack, like ice underfoot as he stepped forward. "Okay," he said uncertainly, looking at the scattered papers that held their fledgling ideas. "Let's start with our initial concepts and see how we can build them into a viable plan. From there, we can create a strategy that also factors in everything else." "What else? Oh, you mean..." She trailed off, clearly recalling their earlier conversation, Ethan's past, the looming threats. "Yeah, let's be realistic. We need backup plans in case my debts become more intrusive than they already are." Ethan felt the momentary rush of vulnerability slip between them. Rosa bit her lip, surveying him with a mix of compassion and resolve. "Let's assume you'll need to make a critical decision soon," she proposed, a calculated gleam in her eye. "What's our timeline for the project? Can we leverage it to provide you some negotiating power with those, people?" "I don't know. I mean, it might work," he said, feeling the flickers of an idea take hold. "The sooner we can establish credibility with our project, the better position I'll have." Rosa nodded and pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. "Let's outline a realistic timeline for both the project and your finances. We can even enlist some mentorship, find people willing to support our initiative." The more they engaged in solution building, the more Ethan transformed. Anxiety trembled at the edges, but did not consume him. The thrill of planning, of accountability, began to interlace with the threads of his past, allowing him to visualize a future not solely defined by fear. Each dialogue turned into a newfound confidence, a dialogue that didn't just untangle his thoughts, but reframed his self-perception. Perhaps his technical skills weren't just a way to escape, but rather a way to construct bridges from isolation to connection. He was learning to embrace vulnerability, and in that acceptance lay the potential for a profound breakthrough. Yet, as they batted new ideas back and forth, a shadow flickered at the edges of his mind, whispering reminders of what awaited him. The to-do list was no longer just about deadlines. It implicated loss and reclaiming his identity. Would he finish this project and tilt the balance against his past before justice was served by those he owed? Ethan's heart danced to a rhythm of chaos and clarity. He locked eyes with Rosa, their determination mirrored in shared resolve. Tomorrow was a question hanging in the air, and right now, he was on the precipice of rising or falling. The next phone call, the next meeting would define the boundary between freedom and entrapment. The decision was dawning. Would he act decisively, or be swept away once more? In that moment, amidst the hurried notes and sketches, a sharp determination flickered within him. He needed to confront them. What awaited him on the other side of that call? And would he find the courage to reclaim his life? With a restrained breath, Ethan's hand hesitated over the phone. The cool screen absorbed his warmth, contrasting with the pressure building in his chest. He had envisioned this moment countless times, rehearsing both the words and the consequences. The reality of confronting his creditors was not just a mundane task. It was the linchpin of the identity he was desperate to reclaim. Rosa broke his reverie. "Are you ready for this? We can always postpone," she said, her voice grounding him. "No, I need to do this." Ethan's resolve steadied his nerves. "The longer I wait, the worse it will get. Then let's go over your points one more time. You've got this." As they walked through his proposed script, Ethan felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, a mixture of fear and anticipation. Each word felt like a pebble thrown into a turbulent sea, creating ripples that threatened to drown him in anxiety. But with Rosa's strategic guidance, he pieced together a plan, reinforcing his voice with analytics and evidence, transforming his desperation into determination. He placed the call, and the dialogue erupted in a whirlwind of fear and urgency. His heart raced, each beat a countdown to confrontation. The voice on the other end was clipped and businesslike, every syllable a reminder of his past mistakes. Yet, amidst the robotic exchanges, Ethan began to reclaim his agency. He outlined his strategy, intent, timelines, and the bridge between their old terms and his new offer. "Consider this an adjustment period. I'm committed to resolving my debts, but I need time to implement my plan," he said. There was strength in his voice that he hadn't realized lay dormant within him. With each rebuttal from the other party, Ethan's confidence blossomed. He countered with data, facts, and projections he'd meticulously crafted with Rosa. What had once felt like an inevitable decline now accumulated into calculated opportunities. For the first time, he wasn't just another debtor. He was a voice of negotiation, a name asserting himself against the shadows of his past. "Fine," the voice finally conceded. "We can discuss a possible adjustment, but I'll need everything documented by Friday." Ethan felt the tension ease, if only slightly. The call ended, yet his mind raced. "I did it," he murmured, a thrill coursing through him. Rosa sprung from her chair, wrapping him in a tight embrace. "I knew you could." The moment was electric, sparking a realization within him. Ethan was no longer defined by the weight of his past or the debts that chased him. He was evolving. The struggle for control echoed far beyond financial battles. It reached into the very core of who he was becoming, a partner, a collaborator, not just a lone figure ensnared by failure. "Now what?" he asked, reveling in the newfound freedom he had just created. "Now we work through the rest of the project," Rosa replied, her eyes glimmering with shared enthusiasm. "We capitalize on this momentum. we become a success story. Ethan could feel the potential rampant in the air, electrifying. He was ready to pour that energy back into their work, not to escape, but to build. The solution they sought was no longer a distant idea. It was tangible. And yet, just as confidence surged, doubt clawed at his thoughts. Would they truly be able to pull this project off? Was this glimpse of triumph a fleeting phase? Ethan swallowed hard, aware that the adversaries of his past loomed larger than he wanted to admit, ready to challenge his resolve yet again. The back-and-forth plane of office banter morphed into strategic discussions, where every big idea gained clarity. But as plans materialized, Ethan couldn't help but sense the urgency to stay one step ahead of potential threats. This evolving project meant more than progress on their end. It tied into his fate, his entire future. As they finalized the next steps, a myriad of worries crept in, calling him back to the reality that shadowed them. What if they failed? What if he wasn't enough? Ethan's fingers drummed nervously on the table, his focus flitting between the documents they meticulously crafted. The line was more than blurred. It had become a razor-thin thread tethering him between past failures and a hopeful future. With a deep breath, he steeled himself. This was just the beginning. But what lay in the wake of this new project would not only define their success, it would stake his claim against the remnants of fear still flickering at the edges of his ambitions. It was time to step beyond the precipice and shoot for something brighter. Would the challenges unfold as anticipated, or was he paving a path leading straight into the jaws of uncertainty? Neither option quelled the inner tumult, but he had decided. This time, he would fight for the right to carve his destiny. Ethan Blake stood before the expansive windows of his office, the sunset cascading a warm golden hue across the room. This moment, the culmination of weeks filled with anxiety, vulnerability, and growth, felt surreal. The chaos of his past had not disappeared, but he had confronted it, wielding transparency like armor as he forged a deeper partnership with Rosa. In the ensuing weeks, he had transformed not only the app concept, but himself. Fear had no longer contained him. The very debts that had haunted his dreams now sparked a determination to redefine his narrative. With Rosa by his side, he had learned to navigate the complexities of entrepreneurship, yet his most profound revelations emerged from their shared vulnerability. As they neared the project's launch, a sense of accomplishment thrummed within him. What had begun as a burden morphed into a lifeline. Their brainstorming sessions turned into symphonies of collaboration, framing the app as a beacon for aspiring innovators. The previous chaos was now a defined pathway forward, blending Rosa's vision and his newfound clarity into something greater. Ethan recalled that harrowing call with his creditors, the very moment he chose honesty over fear. He had prepared meticulously, laying out a strategic plan filled with projections that demonstrated growth potential. Today, he had successfully negotiated an extension, a moment he recognized was not just about financial alleviation, but proof of his ability to reclaim control over his life. The launch day arrived, each tick of the clock urging him forward with excitement and trepidation. The app, now a tangible representation of their shared dreams, stood poised to disrupt a stagnant marketplace, potentially changing countless lives. As he took a deep breath, he realized this moment encapsulated his entire journey. No longer just a chance to achieve monetary success, but an opportunity to inspire authenticity in others. Standing on the stage in front of a sea of eager faces, he felt a current of confidence surging through him. As he introduced the app, he articulated not just its features but the heart behind it, the partnership born from connection, trust, and overcoming adversity. This was not merely a product. It was a testament to resilience, capturing the essence of their combined struggles and triumphs. You don't need to fit a mold dictated by others, he concluded, allowing his gaze to sweep over the audience. Your journey is yours alone. Celebrate your uniqueness, even in the face of trials. Applause erupted, but it was the genuine faces in the crowd that struck him most profoundly. Among them stood Rosa, her expression radiant, mirror to his own. In that moment, recognition washed over him. He had stepped into his truth and emerged not just as Ethan the millionaire, but as Ethan the collaborator. As their app gained traction, doorways opened, revealing opportunities to mentor others, to share their story of overcoming darkness with hope and clarity. The past no longer dictated his future, and as the weight lifted, the clarity of purpose painted a bright landscape ahead. Together, they held meetings with potential investors, spurred by the story told through their app. Each engagement showcased the skills he had sharpened not just in business, but also as a leader, polished and confident. Weeks turned into months, and with every stride toward success, the menacing implications of his past faded, overshadowed by the genuine growth he had achieved. He had embraced vulnerability without losing credibility, fostering trust that extended beyond simple business transactions. Rosa became not just his professional partner, but an irreplaceable ally. Their combined aspirations birthed a thriving community centered around innovation, creativity, and most importantly, authenticity. In paving this new road, Ethan had proven his strength, both to himself and the world. He learned that the greatest accomplishments stem from the depths of his true self, not from the gilded facades. As a final testament to his transformation, he organized a community event, inviting underprivileged innovators to showcase their projects. This occasion represented not only his redemption journey, but a commitment to lifting others as he had risen. In this moment, Ethan Blake found closure, but not an end. This was just the beginning of an empowered life lived with intention. He had conquered not only the ghosts of his past, but had built an everlasting foundation upon which he could continuously grow, evolve, and inspire. The dream that once felt burdensome became a reality, celebrated in shared moments of triumph and honesty. It was an echo of everything he had wanted, transformed by authenticity, leading him into the life he'd always aspired to live. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans know how vital it is to support powerful stories of personal transformation.